Hello there, this is Dave Hompes and welcome to this short video in which I'm going to use a case study of a recent client of ours to basically illustrate to you, explain to you the benefits of the stool testing that we offer, because we've had so many questions recently, such as why would I want to do a stool test with you guys when my doctor can do one? What's the added benefit of paying so much money to actually do one of these tests? How will it help me get better? And so on and so forth. And I think it's really, really important to use these examples just to be able to give you a feel, really, of what you get and why these stool tests can be so helpful in helping you get better in a shorter space of time. So this, as I say, is a real life client. This is somebody who has done a stool test. You can actually see that the name is blocked out for client confidentiality purposes. But you will also see here that the stool test was, or the stool sample was collected on the 23rd of March 2016, so it's a very recent one. This is a 61-year-old lady. I don't know whether you're going to just be able to see the yellow note that I've created here. She has irritable bowel syndrome, she's low on energy, she's not sleeping very well, and she's also struggling with psoriasis, osteoporosis, and there are some thyroid difficulties that she has as well, and she's also had a hysterectomy. So there's quite a health history there. So before I go any further with the stool test, the first thing that we do before we speak to you about your stool test results is we take a very detailed health history. We have a couple of online questionnaires that we ask you to complete, because taking a very, very complete history and symptom explanation or description from you really helps us to get to see what is going on before we speak with you about your test results, and also to help us put the test results in context. Because without optimal context, without finding out who you are, how you're feeling, what the health history is, what your family history is, it's very, very difficult to put these test results into context, right? It's very, very important that we get the full picture and don't just rely on the data from the test. So this lady's having a little bit of a hard time, and she wanted to do a stool test to see whether she could find out what is going on in a digestive system to create the IBS. So what I'll do now is just very briefly describe what you see here as I scroll down the test results, putting her health into context with the test results, and also explaining what all these fancy long names mean on the chart here. So the first thing that you can see is that we have a big blue header called pathogens, and pathogens just means disease causing. So these organisms that I'm about to explain, these are all considered disease causing by the medical system. So page 1 of this report has what we call pathogenic organisms on there. And as I say, these are the ones that the medical system knows cause disease. And you will see some familiar names on here. You have things like E. coli, you have Salmonella. There are other bacteria that you may have heard of, like Campylobacter and Clostridium difficile. And then you have parasitic pathogens, you have Cryptosporidium, you have Entamoeba histolytica, and you have Giardia. And then you have viral pathogens, so you have adenovirus, norovirus, rotavirus, and sometimes you will get outbreaks of these, and they'll tend to cause some nasty 24, 48-hour bugs. Now the interesting thing is, at the moment, the UK NHS is trialling the exact technology that I'm talking about here, that this testing uses for these organisms, these pathogenic organisms. And within a few years, I think this technology will be in the National Health Service. However, I wouldn't get your hopes up too high, because they'll only use the technology if you have serious digestive problems like protracted or long-term vomiting and serious cramping diarrhea, often associated with things like food poisoning or coming back from an exotic holiday where you may have picked up something nasty, one of these organisms that you can see on this page here because of the poor food quality, the poor sanitation and what have you. And these organisms can cause serious problems, and that's why the medical system is interested in dealing with them. However, just to reiterate, you're not likely to get tested unless you have very significant digestive symptoms. A little bit of IBS, some bloating, some fatigue, aches and pains, headaches and what have you. They're not going to test you for that. Now, the technology that we're using here is also FDA approved, Federal Drug Administration approved. But only for these pathogenic organisms, and I'm going to go into why that is in a couple of moments' time. So we have the bacterial pathogens, we have the parasitic pathogens, and we have the viral pathogens. On the next page, we have H. pylori, and we have normal bacterial flora. So this is where we're going to start to differentiate what we're looking at in this particular test versus what your doctor is going to want to look at, and even your gastroenterologist. So you'll see with H. pylori, you have Helicobacter pylori, and then you have virulence factor CAG-A, virulence factor VAC-A. What on earth does that mean? Well, basically, not all H. pylori is created equal. Some strains of H. pylori, such as the CAG-A and the VAC-A, are linked more heavily with ulcers and with the development of serious diseases like stomach cancer and with heart disease as well, cardiovascular disease. So it's important to know what specific strains you have if you want to work on avoiding developing more serious or significant illnesses later on. Now, I don't want to scare you with that, because once you know you have H. pylori, to be honest, it's not that difficult to get rid of. You know, we have a very, very high success rate in helping people get rid of H. pylori, so that's not really the issue. But it is useful to know if you have certain disease or symptom conditions, which strain of H. pylori you have, to see whether that strain of H. pylori might be specifically contributing to that symptom or illness that you're experiencing. You can see that this particular lady here, she doesn't actually have H. pylori. There's nothing there indicating that she has it. And if we scroll back up to the pathogenic bacteria, there's nothing indicating that she has one of those either, or a parasitic pathogen either. We do see these come back on the tests very frequently, but in this case, this lady doesn't have anything going on really on, in terms of the pathogens. With the normal bacterial flora, well, this is what you're not going to get in the medical system. So we're going to move into territory now that the docs are not really going to be interested in. These are the bacteria that are supposed to be in your digestive system. This is the Bifidobacter, the Enterococcus, the E. coli, the Lactobacillus, and what have you. And these are supposed to be there, and they perform very, very important roles in your digestive system, helping you break down food, helping support your immune system, helping to keep inflammation levels down, helping to keep the bad bugs away, and many, many other functions as well. Now, you can see here that the first quote-unquote abnormal finding in this test is that this lady has low levels of lactobacillus. You can see that there's a big red low just at the bottom of the page here, and it's clear that the lactobacillus levels are low. Now, this starts to give us an indication that she has something called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is something that is a recognized medical term, but the doctors are not considering it at ground level where they're working with you as a patient. They're only interested in the pathogenic organisms that create disease, and they're the ones we talked about on the first page there. So this lady has low level of lactobacillus, and then we move on to the opportunistic bacteria. Now, what are the opportunistic bacteria, and why are they different from the pathogenic bacteria? Well, the pathogenic bacteria we know cause disease. Opportunistic bacteria may cause disease. If you go into the medical literature, you will find stacks of studies linking these opportunistic bacteria and the opportunistic parasites and the opportunistic fungi that we're going to talk about with symptoms and disease. The trouble is, the medical system at the moment does not consider these organisms to be problematic in the vast majority of cases, and so they don't even test for them. Why would they waste taxpayers' money testing for organisms that they don't consider to be problematic? And this is a problem because at the ground level, where medicine is being practiced, there is a yawning gap between the knowledge and the practical application of this work and the scientific and medical literature. The literature says, yes, these organisms cause problems, but the doctors are not practicing medicine that is based on that research, unfortunately. Now, it will come about eventually. It's nobody's fault. I'm just giving you as it is. I'm not blaming anybody here, but I'm showing you how the test can actually help identify some of the reasons you're not feeling very well if your medical stool testing has come back normal, which it oftentimes does. So we have the opportunistic bacteria, and they tend to overgrow when they have the chance to do so, and that's why they're called opportunistic, not pathogenic. So they could be hanging around in your digestive system without really causing any problems if they're there in small numbers, but if they get an opportunity to overgrow, bang, they can cause some significant challenges for you. Now, many of these opportunistic bacteria are not just associated with digestive problems. They are also associated with autoimmune conditions like fibromyalgia, like arthritis, urinary tract infections, headaches, skin problems, and symptoms and health challenges elsewhere in your body that don't even seem to be related to your gut. And that happens because you'll get an immune system response in your digestive system that can then spread a little bit like a fire spreading around a house, a little bit like a fire starts in the kitchen, then spreads around the house. Well, if your digestive system is the kitchen and you get a ton of inflammation from an immune response in the gut, that immune response and the inflammation can overflow and get to your nervous system and your brain, to your joints, to your liver, to your ovaries, to your pancreas, to your muscles, and what have you, and create symptoms there. This is all in the literature. There are thousands of studies showing this. I can't obviously give you them all, but you've got to trust me on it. I've read them. So you have Citrobacter, you have Klebsiella, you have Proteus, and Klebsiella and Proteus are very, very, very common as urinary tract infections as well. And oftentimes in the urinary tract, you have the same imbalance in the gut. And that's usually in women because the vaginal opening is very close to the rectal opening and the bacteria can communicate with one another. Sounds crazy. They don't have mobile phones, but bacteria are much cleverer than you think they are. And you can get a lot of communication, and you end up with a situation, if you're a lady, if you're not careful, where if you have imbalances in the gut, those same imbalances present in the urinary tract and create repeated or recurring urinary tract infections. Then we also have Yersinia, and Yersinia is known or certainly associated with autoimmune issues with the thyroid gland. So we can see from this lady, if we just scroll down and look at the opportunistic bacteria, that although she doesn't have an imbalance that warrants a big red positive, you can see that with Proteus species, I don't know whether my highlighting pen's going to work here, I'll see. With the Proteus species here, I just put a little black mark next to it. She's got a little bit of an overgrowth, which is another indication of dysbiosis. If we go down a little bit further, she also has some Staphylococcus here, and she also has some Streptococcus here as well. Now, definitely Proteus, Staphylococcus, and Streptococcus, every single one of them is associated with autoimmune disorders in the body. That's where your own immune system attacks its own tissue, and often the trigger for that is some kind of infection or some kind of dysbiosis that the immune system takes exception to and starts to mount a response against. Why is that important? Well, her symptoms, many of them, are related to autoimmune conditions. She said in her initial forms that she has autoimmune disorders going on. She has some arthritic problems, she has muscle aches, she has thyroid problems, and by the way, 90% of thyroid problems are autoimmune anyway. So I'm looking at this test and I'm already thinking, wow, we have low levels of lactobacillus, we have some overgrowth of Proteus, we have overgrowth of Staphylococcus, we have overgrowth of Streptococcus, and they're all associated with autoimmune conditions, and this lady has a big sort of hodgepodge of autoimmune related disorders that she's struggling with at the moment. And so I'm thinking we're going to be able to add some significant value here. Then we move down to the parasites. These are parasites that are not considered to be disease causing by the medical system, but I can tell you right now, these parasites can be bloody detrimental to your health. How do I know? I had blastocystis hominis, and this lady also has blastocystis hominis. If you see the big red positive here, just put a black mark next to it, you can see that the blasto, as I like to call it, is there. Blasto is associated with fatigue. She has fatigue. It's associated with irritable bowel syndrome. She has irritable bowel syndrome. So there's no doubt here that the blasto is playing a role. Other organisms that we see frequently, Dientamoeba fragilis, which is the next one down, Endolimax nana, I see those a lot. I'd say they're probably coming back on maybe 1 in every 4 tests. You'll see a blasto or Dientamoeba fragilis or an Endolimax nana. Entamoeba coli, Chylomastic, Cyclospora, and Pentatrichomonas, they're a little bit rarer. You don't see them as often, but we have had cases of Cyclospora over recent times, and also the Pentatrichomonas as well. So we're building a picture here. This lady, if we just remind ourselves, she has low lactobacillus, that's dysbiosis. She has Proteus, she has Staphylococcus, she has Streptococcus, overgrowing at levels that we probably wouldn't want to see in a normal circumstance. And then she has Blastocystis hominis positive here as well. And then if we move down to the fungal and yeast section, we can also see some issues because she has a low overgrowth of Candida species. Now, this isn't Candida albicans. The Candida albicans, which is here, again, put my little black mark next to it, that's below the detection limit. But Candida albicans is not the only strain of Candida that can cause problems. You have Candida gabrata or galabrata, and you also have Candida tropicalis. And so Candida albicans, which is the one that most people talk about, is one of the ones that we see a lot. But this lady has a different type of Candida overgrowing. It isn't necessarily a strong overgrowth, but that doesn't matter. If her immune system is taking exception to even a small overgrowth of Candida, that can trigger just as many problems as a strong overgrowth. It isn't just about the amount of the organism in the gut that's overgrowing or infecting. It's about whether her immune system or whether your immune system is actually reacting to that particular organism. So the numbers don't necessarily matter. Too many people email me and say, oh, my H. pylori test shows that I have really high amounts. And I say, look, it doesn't matter. It's about how your body, how your immune system is relating and interacting with the H. pylori, with the blastocystis, with the candida, with whatever organism is in there that is creating the challenge for you. And as you know, a lot of people can go through life with a little bit of H. pylori, with a little bit of candida, with a little bit of blasto, whatever it might be, and they'll feel fine. It won't cause any problems because it's the interaction of the organism with you, with that person, with each individual, that creates the symptoms or not. No organism is truly trouble-causing unless it's a really nasty sort of E. coli or something like that we talked about at the start, which is a medically recognized pathogen. These opportunists, the parasites, they're only going to cause a problem if they react in a certain way with your body and if they're allowed to overgrow because your body becomes run down in the first place. So if your body gets run down by stress, by poor diet, by nutritional deficiencies and what have you, we end up in a situation where we're going to find things overgrowing in your system that shouldn't be there. We have other fungal and yeast organisms like Geotrichum, Microsporidia, Trichosporon, all these fancy names. It sounds like Star Trek, doesn't it? But she doesn't have any of those. And then I want to go, and by the way, the medical system doesn't recognize these parasites and doesn't recognize the yeast and fungi very much either. Or do they? Here's the crazy thing when it comes to things like candida. If a woman has a vaginal candida overgrowth, that is recognized by the medical system. If a woman or a man or a child has an oral candida overgrowth, which causes oral thrush, that is recognized by the medical system. Serious illnesses like AIDS and end-stage cancers where the immune system is very weak, well, the medical system recognizes candida as one of the things that can actually finish people off when their immune systems are so low and run down. But we don't have a medical system recognizing that candida overgrowth in the gut can cause problems. I'm telling you right now, it's one of the most common things we find and one of the most common reasons why people don't feel very well. Now, what about these additional tests at the bottom? Again, these are phenomenal markers on the test. They are worth their weight in gold. Why? Because it's not just about the organisms in your gut. It's about how well your gut is functioning as well. So you can see here that we have fancy names like SIGA, anti-gliadin, elastase 1, lactoferrin, and occult blood. Let's start with the easy one. Occult blood simply means, do they find blood in your stool that might indicate damage to the stomach and intestine and might indicate the need for a referral to have an endoscopy or a colonoscopy? If that comes back positive, the first thing I say to my client is you need to go and have this checked medically, because occult blood is a sign of potentially more serious disease. It might not be, it might be something very minor, but I can't take that chance. I've got to get that ruled out medically so that I can do my work with peace of mind. Lactoferrin is a type of chemical that is present when there is very high inflammation in the digestive system, and that's usually associated with an inflammatory bowel disorder like colitis or Crohn's disease or diverticulitis. We sometimes see this very high in people, and it's one of the distinguishing characteristics between a kind of a standard case of irritable bowel syndrome and a more complicated case of inflammatory bowel disease. So it's very, very important to distinguish the two. Elastase 1 is a marker for the output of pancreatic enzymes. When you chew up your food and you swallow it, your food goes into your stomach, as you know. You're supposed to have lots of stomach acid to help break down that food. When the stomach acid levels are not high enough, due to malnutrition, due to H. pylori, due to stress and all of these different things, then you will not trigger the hormonal signals that tell the pancreas to release its enzymes. So you won't get the digestive enzymes being squirted into the top end of the pancreas to help the digestive process. Elastase 1 is a great marker for measuring pancreatic output, and you can see that this lady has very low levels of elastase 1. They're supposed to be well over 200 micrograms per milliliter, which is on the right hand side here. Okay, that's where we need to be. In an ideal world, I like my clients to be at 400 to 500 or more. So she's way down. So I'm immediately thinking she's probably got some low stomach acid issues going on. And then I want to be looking at why that might be happening. Does she have an iron deficiency? Is she zinc deficient? Is she B6 deficient? Because those nutrients are needed to make stomach acid. So I'm all of the time I'm piecing the puzzle together to try and find out where all this is coming from. The anti-gliadin IgA is one of the most important markers on the test. It is a marker for gluten sensitivity. It does not diagnose celiac disease, but it is a very good marker to see whether somebody is reacting to gluten. I like my clients to be beneath 1. I think that any elevation in this marker is a sign that there's a problem with gluten. Now, you can see that this lady is at 6.4, and the cutoff point at the high end of the reference range here is 6.4. And what I would actually want to see, if she was at 6.5, it would come up with a big red high. It would say, this lady is high. So I think that that is a positive. I'm going to treat this lady as if she is gluten sensitive, and I'm even going to recommend that she goes to see a doctor to get properly tested for celiac disease, because celiac disease, again, can trigger many autoimmune responses around the body, and she has autoimmune disease in other areas of the body. So I'm thinking that the gluten could be triggering this. Then finally, we have this SIGA, and SIGA means secretory immunoglobulin A. It is the first line of immune defense in your digestive system. So if you can think of it like lots and lots of immune soldiers. As you may know, the gut houses about 60 to 70% of the entire immune system. So all of your immune system within your body, about 60 to 70% of it is within your gut. And most of it is these secretory IgA soldiers. Now you can see straight away that this lady has a very low level of secretory IgA. That means that her immune system is shot to pieces in the gut. It's not there, it's not functioning, and the immune system is going haywire, probably again one of the reasons why she has autoimmune conditions. Sometimes we see very high levels. So if the immune system has only just started fighting an invader, Sometimes we see it very high, but when it's low like this, we know it's been worn out. And this is a classic situation in somebody who has so many different symptoms, as we detailed at the start of the presentation. Remember, the lady has autoimmune thyroid, she has aches and pains in her body, she has IBS, she has osteoporosis, and she has a whole bunch of things going on there. And some of that is going to be autoimmune. Now, let's take a deep breath. There's an awful lot of information here, as you see, and I'm kind of going through this a little bit quickly. I hope you understand where I'm coming from and what I'm getting at here. I'm not expecting you to become an expert in all of these different markers overnight, but what I'm hoping to do is to show you how powerful these tests are in helping figure out what is going on. Now, with this lady, she's quite complex in her presentation. It's going to take her 6 to 12 months and maybe longer to start to get back to where she wants to be. Doesn't mean she's not going to feel better a lot faster than that, but really realistically, because she's been unwell for a long time, 13 years, she says, since she's been feeling well, we're not going to be able to wave a magic wand and have perfect health overnight. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got to rebalance the bacteria in a digestive system. We've got to get rid of the parasite. We've got to deal with the candida. We've got to get her immune system up, and we've got to get her digesting food properly. And that's before we even consider nutrient replacement to start to get her body back into a more optimally nourished state, because there's no way she's going to be optimally nourished because she's just not digesting her food well, and she probably hasn't been for a long time. So we're going to do other testing with her as well, but not yet. The other tests will provide further pieces in the jigsaw puzzle, but this particular profile shows you, there are multiple things that we need to deal with. There are definite reasons for her IBS, definite reasons why she's not feeling herself. And all of this that we found is really important, because without knowing this information, she probably wouldn't be able to get anywhere. And the interesting thing about this test, and one of the reasons why I wanted to share it with you, is if we scroll back up, she doesn't have any of the pathogens. She doesn't have H. pylori. They are the only things that the medical system considers. So if all her tests come back negative for these pathogens and for the H. pylori, she has nowhere else to go. So test with the doctor, everything comes back normal. But doctor, I feel awful. Well, your test has come back normal. There's nothing we can do for you, I'm afraid. Okay, I'll go home and live with this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to accept that. I don't bloody accept it. It pisses me off that people are in this situation. I hope you can hear this in my voice. I was one of those people in this situation back in 2007. I found I had H. pylori. I found I had aspergillus. I found I had blastocystis hominis. And when I dealt with them, I was a changed person. My energy came back, my digestion was better, my mood improved, my sex drive improved, my dandruff went away, my athlete's foot improved. It was literally a 2 to 3 month transformation, and I went from being grumpy, tired, in pain with my digestive system, thinking, that I had to live with this for the rest of my life, to feeling amazing. And that's when I embarked on the journey on learning how to do this work, because I'm not going to accept that people have to live with all of these different symptoms when there are perfectly solid, scientifically validated tests that you can use in order to get control back of your health. So I hope this has been really helpful. If you'd like to email me about getting a test done, please do so. Or you can click through at the link underneath this video window, and it'll take you to a page where you can read a little bit more about the testing and the process involved in getting hold of one. But I am supremely confident we're going to be able to help this lady. I'm really, really excited, looking forward to having the opportunity to work with her, and I'll keep you updated on her progress as well. My name's Dave Hompes, as you know, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video where I go through another case study with you, and I will catch you soon. Have a great weekend. Thanks.